Oral histories are another tool researchers and historians use to help tell the stories of our past. Since the 1980s, the National Scouting Museum has recorded and collected hours of audio and video stories from former and current scouts. Recently, with the assistance of one of our seasonal museum specialists, Daniel Orcutt, we started to convert these collected oral histories from analog tapes to a digital format. Listening to these recordings is not only an amazing glimpse into the past of Scouting America, but also helps us to better understand and interpret some of the artifacts we have in the collection and on display. This week, we will hear from Green Bar Bill Hillcourt as he tells us how he got started in Scouting, about writing the Danish Scout Handbook, and most importantly, partially answering the question of when he was awarded the Eagle Scout in this edition of Artifact of the Week. Many Scouters I know had the opportunity to meet Green Bar Bill in person. Most, if not all, of these individuals came away with something bearing the unique autograph of Hillcourt, along with the thrill of meeting the man who was cited as the voice of Scouting when he received his Silver Buffalo in 1980. Previously, we have told the story of Hillcourt receiving a Danish copy of Scouting for Boys from his brother for Christmas in 1910. But now you can hear from him in his own words and see how quickly the scouting bug changed his life.
Well, to manage to get into Scouting as a boy, I had to be born at the right time, and that was exactly what I was. I was born at the turn of the century, and then when I was 10, I got for a Christmas gift the Danish translation of Baden-Powell's Scouting for Boys. And that got me all excited. I was 10 at the time, and there was no age requirement at that particular moment. So I spent all Christmas evening and Christmas Day reading about Scouting. And I had to find out what Scouting was like, because it looked very exciting with all of the hiking and the camping and the hut building and the bridge building and everything else that you could dream about. And I decided right then that I was going to be a scout, and then I had to find out how I would be a scout. And he said in a Baden-Powell book that all you have to do is to be 10 years of age, and you make a small group of a patrol, you form a patrol, and you pick a patrol leader and you go out and scout. That's all there was to it. And that's exactly what I did during the rest of the Christmas vacation. I got together with a few of my friends, and we all studied up on the Boy Scout handbook that Baden-Powell had produced, and we decided we were going to become scouts. And
fast forward to 1924. Hillcourt had completed a Master of Science degree in pharmacy and was preparing to fulfill his dream of becoming a pharmacist. Hillcourt had also written 3 boys' books and a Danish Scout handbook.
I got the dream fulfilled of becoming a Master of Science in Pharmacy. I made up my mind that was going to be my life work. To my surprise that it wasn't going to be, because I got bitten by a journalistic spree there. I had written 3 boys' books and a Danish Boy Scout handbook. Well, one was the abbreviated edition of the Danish Boy Scout handbook. And we had new requirements. We needed a new book. And one of the patrol leaders I worked on was a very good artist to make all of the sketches, to illustrate everything. So that came out in a fair edition in 1924. It was done as a special publisher was doing some of the work for the Danish Boy Scouts, and he asked me to do it, and he published it. But then I got the notion of writing a book that was based upon the life of my patrol. I had a very strong patrol there, and we continued sticking together until the last one beyond me happened to die last year. My first real book was the adventure of that small group of boys that I had worked with, doing camping without really being Boy Scouts in it, and having a special adventure on a lone island in the middle of the Danish largest lake. Here's a very simple one. It is spelled in Danish, Ø-E-N. That means the island. I took it into the publisher instead of sending it by mail. 2 weeks afterwards, I showed up in his office to find out what the dickens had happened to the book. I hadn't heard about it being accepted for 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. So he was a very smart person. He invited me to come into his office, and I was told about it, the length of time it takes to determine that a publisher wants a book. And he said, as a matter of fact, I took it home with me. I live outside of town, and I read it on my train journey out there, and I rather liked it. So, and he pressed a button, and a lady came in, and she disappeared, and we continued our conversation, and she came back again with an envelope, and it contained my first advance royalty. And then I wrote the book that I wrote in Liverpool that paid my trip to the United States. It's called I Promise, so you can figure out what that was about. That was about the early days that I had in 1910 that I just described to you, but written out in fiction form with a little more drama to it. It was called Jeg Lover, that was the Danish title of it, but I Promise was the English translation of the title that I gave to you.
The final part of Hillcourt's story we will hear today is about him receiving his Eagle Scout recognition as an adult in the BSA. From 1910 to 1965, it was possible for an adult to earn their Eagle Scout rank. In 1952, the National Council limited the age of scouts eligible to earn Eagle to 18. However, many councils ignored the age restriction until the National Council put an end to the practice in 1965 by making service in a youth leadership position a requirement. That effectively made it impossible for an adult to complete the requirements regardless of age. We pick up the story with Hillcourt, where he is 16 years old and returning to his hometown.
So finally, we managed to get back to Aarhus, and I had started to become a member of the preliminary school for the Aarhus Cathedral School, which was the most prominent one. It was one of these schools where you have to pay the money, and now the money was coming in a little better. And there I joined up with some of my friends, and there were 4 of us who was establishing a new troop, because the first Aarhus troop was going to be too large, and something had to be done about that. So 4 of us got out of that troop, and the oldest became a scoutmaster, and the 4 of us become patrol leaders, and we set out to create a magnificent troop, which we managed to do. That was the year 1917-18, and that's when I managed to finish up so that I got the Danish equivalent of Eagle in those days. I was learning all of the skills of being a scout, so that when I finally got into scouting, most of what they had to do was to check up on whether I had actually done this, and whether I'd actually done this, and I had certification I had been doing all of these different. So there was no problem about that part of it. And then the new scoutmaster, who was my friend, could sign up for it because he was the leader of the troop. So that's how I got into becoming an Eagle Scout in 1917, because eventually it was determined at one of the world conferences, if a boy settles in a different country, he would eventually be equivalent of rating the same that he had rated in his home country. But in America, it took an executive board decision, a National Council Honor Committee had to get into the act to really finalize that. Well, the scoutmaster I came in with was the scoutmaster who had been one of my friends, and eventually he moved out within about a month, and another fellow came in who was not too good of it. But then finally we got a good scoutmaster, a very good scoutmaster, one of these who decided, well, the whole troop has to be run by the patrol leaders and the Patrol Leaders Council, and when we have a patrol leaders meeting, he was finally said, well, I'm going to go to bed, and you can continue until you make up your mind about the whole program for the next month. So that's the kind of training I got in those days. And then sometime afterwards, he stayed with us only for two years, and another scoutmaster came in and he wasn't too good, so I had to take over the troop. It wasn't quite the complete age of it, but I made out all right.
While Hillcourt didn't say when the National Executive Board approved his Eagle Scout Award, we do know it was between 1933 and 1954 based on the medal's design. In 1978, the National Eagle Scout Association recognized Hillcourt with the Distinguished Eagle Scout Award and listed his Eagle rank as being earned in 1918. That's not the last time we'll hear from Greenbar Bill, as his oral history is full of great stories that not only give color and texture to the past, but also give context to our present and future. Well, that's all the time we have for this week. Join us next time as we continue to learn more about the history of Scouting America through the collection of the National Scouting Museum and Artifact of the Week.